Hi, and welcome to the 210th Sales Transformation Podcast. We tend to check in occasionally, usually at the start of the year and halfway through. And I can't believe we're already at the halfway through mark. So this episode really is about reflecting on the year we've had to date and what our predictions are going to be for the next half of the year. So I'm joined by Phil and Jesus. So Jesus is head of consulting, Phil CEO, I'm Will, I'm head of sales at Consalia. So yeah, I'm going to facilitate this discussion, and so let's start things off. Perhaps we could start with Phil. How are you feeling about 2026 so far?
Well, I'm very disappointed England didn't make it to the World Cup final. That's very important. Start by bringing a bit of football into this, particularly as Jesus is celebrating winning with the Spanish team.
And he's wearing his kit as well.
And he's wearing his Spanish, which is very appropriate.
Yeah. You know, I don't know if I will see a game, so I need to enjoy it. Yeah.
But no, I mean, right this moment, I think, as we go into the summer, in inverted commas, recess, it's a good chance to pause and reflect on what's happened so far, and also to start to sort of catch one's breath and start to think about the next 6 months. So yeah. So I'm in that nice stage where you've got slightly more reflection time, and I quite enjoy the summer months for that. Yeah.
Interesting. And Jesus, how about you? I mean, I know you've been so insanely busy since Christmas time. If you were to reflect on 2026 so far, are there any kind of key highlights or reflections that you want to share?
Yeah, I think last time we had this kind of session, we spoke about the roller coaster, and I think the roller coaster sometimes looks like it's gonna be getting calm, but then it comes back. Yeah. So you see, as an example is the war in the Middle East that looked like calm, and then we go again. Yeah. So I think this is the new normal. So when I'm seeing we've been very busy making some. Helping some customers in sales and doing some turnaround transformations. So it's tough times because there is no much certainty on several things. So doing any change or any it's complicated. I think companies think twice. Sometimes they wait or delay their investments, trying to see if the roller coaster calms, but it's not calming. So I think only the brave are just starting and going ahead, even if the roller coaster continues or going even more harder. So yeah, I think as Phil is saying, I think this moment is a very good moment to do a pause, to step back and reflect. Many people are working hard, intense, fighting, and sometimes we don't prioritize the right things, so we don't focus on the right things because of this urgency. Everything looks urgent. Yeah. So that's what I feel. That's what I feel. But I think it's a good moment now for this kind of reflective thinking, something that we use quite a lot, and I definitely think this is very important.
I agree. I just want to pick up on something Phil said, that he said, I think you used the word recess or something like that, because it is sort of a quiet time in the summer. And I personally don't feel like it's quiet. I don't feel like things calm down in August anymore. They used to, but it feels as busy as any other month these days. And I think, I think for us as a business, we've been very busy since the start of Christmas. It doesn't show any signs of slowing down, but when you kind of reflect on, things, the world in which we're operating now, I think you alluded to that, Jesus. there is still uncertainty. There's still wars happening in the world that's affecting, just take what's happening in Iran and how oil prices are fluctuating and how that's affecting growth and things like that. And that kind of leads to this sort of cautionary tale that I think all businesses are kind of operating in. And that doesn't seem to be slowing down at all.
Yeah, it's interesting that in spite of that, I think there's certain parts of the market, in spite of all concerns, are doing quite well. I mean, I know that recently some of the technology stocks have dropped. Some part influenced by what may be happening in China, with some of the developments of, some of their sort of new AI tools that are coming out. But it's interesting to see. I mean, it is volatile, but somehow, business still soldiers on. It still rumbles away, even though there's lots of uncertainty. It hasn't maybe disrupted things as much as we perhaps had thought.
Or not yet.
Yeah.
Maybe not yet. I know. It's quite often what happens when you come back into September, they start to look at things like debt interest payments and can the US economy afford to service them? I'm sure we're going to get some interesting news popping up. And of course, closer to home, we've got, Andy Burnham, coming in as Prime Minister. I guess the world is probably thinking we're a bit of a joke here in the UK with the number of prime ministers we seem to have had in a short period of time. But of course, that's going to be, adding another layer in the UK economy, at least, of, I wonder what the future holds in terms of direction in the UK. But, honestly, the UK has got very, very limited levers that the government can influence in order to stimulate productivity and growth. So we're probably going to be in a similar situation now as we have been for some years. So I wonder how long he'll stay in office for. We shall see.
Well, I think unlike Starmer, let's hope that Burnham sets out a growth agenda. I feel like Starmer never really had one, and that probably leads to kind of decision paralysis for organizations because they don't. I don't know how supportive Starmer was to business and to enable growth. So let's hope Burnham has a vision on that note. But yeah, some of the let's talk about growth. Let's talk about technology, how it's affecting sales, because I think one thing that we've experienced and what we can see as a growing trend is AI. It continues to be. It's been a topical conversation for us certainly over the last year. But have you noticed any kind of trends, any differences from the first half of the year, how companies approach AI and how it affects salespeople, and how are we using AI? Maybe you've got some thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think so, because now you hear more and more on clients that they are interested either in education or bespoke or consulting projects to introduce AI in some form. I've been looking into some big telco players here in the UK that are starting to use AI, and by use AI meaning educate into AI, using several kind of hackathons or things like that, and trying to invest a lot on educating people on how to use AI, because it's not just to get access to AI or throw a ChatGPT access. Yeah, you need to go with them. Some people will be more eager to learn and to apply into their jobs, and some other will be still, let's say, in defense mode. Yeah, and so I see companies that without, as we say in Spanish, without building a cathedral, they are starting to invest on AI and training and educate their personnel. We've seen as well through one of our partners that there are other companies that go much farther into the development and the value chain by adopting cutting edge technology. So instead of there is we see this like a pyramid, right? So we have the base, which they are trying to train the sales professionals, train on how to use ChatGPT, how to prompt, do an intelligent prompt, and prompts that they can repeat, start to use some agents or create some agents. That's like the basic layer. The top of the pyramid is where you find these solutions like Aviso, which is an end-to-end revenue intelligence platform we've been partnered with, by the way. Last year, we've been doing a lot of stuff with them. And they are the most advanced technology in sales with AI. Yeah. But this is like the Ferrari. Some organizations don't need the Ferrari, but at the same time, they need something that is more customized to their needs. So there is a middle layer that normally is starting to grow now with some niche consultancies supporting that, AI development, AI-based development. But sometimes it's not just consultancies or niche consultancies, are the hyperscalers like OpenAI or Anthropic. They are investing big amount of money on teams, supporting teams and projects to help their enterprise customers to adopt AI more quick. And the reason behind is that I think they've been focused on the consumer side, but now they are more or less in the world of the consumer side. So we have a number of different hyperscalers offering different solutions, that some of them are better for audio, video, etc. They are now attacking the B2B sector massively. So you can see that they're investing on creating new business development teams and consulting teams into the local countries. So UK, Spain, Germany. So this is coming, and I believe it's coming to create this middle layer. So the thing is we need to understand when we talk to a customer, and maybe I'm too long on the answer, Will, but when we talk to a customer, we need to understand where they are, what they need, and what is the pace of adoption they are ready to. Yeah. Sometimes the customers are not ready to go to the top of the pyramid or even the middle. They have to start by the base. So, it's a kind of a balance. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, AI, we could speak for the entire hour just on the topic of AI and the multitude of levels you can view it in. Phil, I just wanted to take your reflection on, have you noticed how our clients are using AI, and has it impacted how we deliver to our clients as well?
Well, let's take the last question first. I mean, we're certainly integrating AI with our training programs now in a way that we are doing it much more proactively than maybe 6 months ago. And what's astonishing is to see how the models that we have using AI can generate incredible outputs. So that's that's been a real revelation, not just to us, but to the participants that are taking place on the training program. It's actually kind of a real wow factor. If you prompt in the right way, it's unbelievable to see people's reaction to what it can do and the impact it can make on productivity and just the quality of the work that they do. There's a great variety of ability generally within the groups, with some who are just not using it very much at all. It's not a way of, it's not ingrained into a way of working. It's something that they do occasionally. But actually mixing the two together, you can often get that sort of revelation or change, seeing how colleagues are using it. So we're seeing an incredible increase, and I think it's going to happen very quickly in the sales world when the people start to see quite how they can. I think from my point of view, I've begun to understand, on the one hand, how powerful the tools are, but on the other hand, how dangerous it is if the tools are used incorrectly or in the public domain. It's very interesting to see some of the directives coming out of the EU, which are coming into play in the next week or so, which are around transparency. And you cannot, for example, in open chat GPT, ask it to produce an account plan on a strategic account. You just cannot do that. It's too dangerous, because once the information is out there in the public domain, it's in the public domain. And so the answer has got to be sort of working with more ring-fenced AI environments, which I believe many corporates are now embracing because of this risk. And I think they call it shadow AI. I think that's the term that's being used, is that you have AI as it's developed with your company and its systems. The shadow AI is what employees might be using outside of their systems with some of these open formats. And that's going to become a real issue, I think, for companies as they start to progress this year. So it's interesting. For example, we've been testing the use of our tools in an open environment against a closed environment, where employees have access to ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, all of these sort of AI agents, but within a closed environment. So we mapped the same prompts and same questions on a closed environment within an open environment, and there's no doubt that the open environment can produce much richer sources of content than the closed. I think this is going to be a bit of a challenge moving forward, because you're going to be wanting as an employee to get richer content, which you might be able to get in the open environment, but you've got company policy saying you must not use the open environment. So I think this is going to be it's going to be a huge topic as we move into the rest of the year. Jesus, perhaps I'm about 6 months too late on this, because you were probably there before I was, but it has legal implications actually for suppliers.
I think there are two topics to take into account here, right? One topic is when we want to do an account plan with public data on both sides, my company and competitors or potential clients, etc. This is something you can do on an open ChatGPT, because in any way you are using public data on all the sources. The problem comes when we want to use private confidential data to do a more tailored and more specific account plan. That's the problem, right? When you put that into an open ChatGPT.
Of course, you could go to a public domain to get data, but when you start to look at an account plan, you're doing white space analysis, you're doing stakeholder mapping, you're looking at the personalities of the people. Just imagine sort of you profiling, different personality types of the accounts that you're, the stakeholders you're selling to, and it's out there in the public domain. You just cannot do that. So yes, there may be parts of an account plan, but I would say very limited parts of an account plan where you can use open source data. But the majority of the account plan simply cannot be there in the public domain. And I would argue, therefore, you cannot do an account plan at all in ChatGPT. A few questions, of course, publicly available information on financial performance and, other stuff.
Yeah, but you're talking about profiling. So if somebody is posting in LinkedIn and it's public, this is public information. I can do a report on public information.
Yes, you can.
Whatever is in the internet.
Produce the plan, though. You cannot produce the plan in an open. You can get information from a public domain, but your plan cannot be in a public domain. It has to be internal.
Yeah.
So I think that it's going to be very tempting with some of the tools that we have, for example, for students to use open source ChatGPT to produce the account plan using our tools. It's very doable if you've got someone who's half good at prompting. Yeah. So I think that we need to be very careful in how we recommend our tools are being used in this sort of AI world in which we're now operating.
That's what I was explaining, right? So there are two ways. One way is two directions. One direction is where I take the information from to do an account plan. I can take information from the public domain.
Of
Then with
course.
this information, I can go in my private space, which is still there is an AI running into the private space in the private, cloud system, etc. So it's not public, and then produce my account plan, and that's stored in the enterprise domain. But still, you can ask to go to the public domain for asking for information about anything that might be useful for the account plan. But
Yeah.
you're not posting, let's say, it's not posting, right? But you're not posting your account plan into the public domain because you're using the private one. So you need to engineer that. But of course, you need access to the public domain because otherwise, your knowledge about the customer profiles, investment, etc., is going to be very, very limited if you just get information from your internal.
No, I accept that. I'm just talking about the account plan itself. It cannot
The account
be.
plan is like the outcome. Where you store the outcome is a different thing. Yeah. So you don't store. I fully agree with you on that. We shouldn't
But
store
interestingly,
plans in a public domain.
even access to public domain with enterprise systems that have got Cloud, Gemini, and ChatGPT are not able to source publicly available information to the same degree of quality as you could use with ChatGPT and Gemini in a public environment. We've tested it with a client who's doing just that. Yeah, it's astonishing how misquoted some of the source references were from the public arena using Claude, using ChatGPT in a private enterprise environment, which had access to the public quoted information out there. So there must be filters in the enterprise system when you've got an enterprise version of Claude or ChatGPT that stop it getting the access to the quality information you could have if you source ChatGPT separately.
So that's on the company then to ensure that chat is up to date.
It is, yeah. It is, but it's a big challenge. It is, of course. I'm sure they're aware. Because their employees are going to say this is not giving me quite what I need.
I mean, I think it's so important that clients are aware of this because they won't remain competitive if they aren't able to use AI, chat, Claude, Gemini in the way that it should be, in the way that it can. And so if it simply isn't giving the right details or provides the right level of confidence for a sales professional to be more proficient, then they won't use it, but someone else will use it.
Yeah.
Another professional will use it. It's a source of competitive advantage.
Yeah, I know companies are really sort of trying to process all of this at the moment, and it's now on a recent workshop, for example, that we had, people weren't allowed to bring their own laptops and use laptops to create any ChatGPT information, but they were allowed to use their personal phones. Interesting. So, anyway, I think there's going to be a lot more in there, and the legal side of this is also, interesting. I think it's something that as a company we need to spend a bit more time kind of reviewing what is the legal position. If we have clients, for example, who are EU-based clients, we've got to recognize the EU laws being introduced in a few weeks' time about transparency and quite how we can quote, the usage of any tools that we have. But I'm
So I know
sure
the EU, Phil, you've mentioned the EU rules a couple of times. So I know that the EU AI Act is coming out into force in August, but what does that mean?
Jesus, you may know more about this than me. The area that I've looked at is been looking at transparency in the way AI is being used, and the importance of labeling.
I think I'm not updated on the last 1 or 2 weeks on these matters that you mentioned. I mean, I think transparency is was part of the strategy for the regulation. I've been more focused on when we discuss with customers, they are all interested about, well, not all the models are the same. So in Europe there are some models like Llama from Meta are, let's say, less desirable by enterprises for some reasons, and they are interested on the GDPR. They are interested on the EU AI Act that is already in place. They're interested in understanding where the data is going to be stored, what is the connections, where the connections have to be between the system, the AI system, and the enterprise system. And sometimes some of the companies have legacy systems, so there is an internal, say, development and budget that is required to really make things work. Yeah, so it's not as easy as to plug into the system. Sometimes this plug is not as easy. Yeah, and it's also the other thing that I'm very worried about is, of course, the cybersecurity, because we are starting to, and I think that's a big, huge topic right now, because as you say, you are in between the, let's say, the public domain sources, etc., information. So you have a tool that is accessing that, but it's accessing as well your internal confidential information to produce something. So cybersecurity is a big element on any AI deployment right now.
I've now found the Article 50 of the EU Act. It's coming into place on the 2nd of August. Yeah, and it covers transparency obligations in 4 situations. One is when AI interacts directly with people. Yeah, when AI generates synthetic content. I'm quite interested in the word synthetic content. When AI is used for emotion recognition or biometric categorization, that's going to have a major impact on organizations like Gong. Yeah, which is looking at emotional intelligence in conversation analytics. And then when AI creates deepfakes or text published on matters of public interest, and then it goes into rules for providers, and rules for deployers as well. So if you take the Sales Intelligence Studio, take what we're doing with Aviso, for example. And I'm sure Aviso is complying to EU regulation, because I know that Offer talks about it a lot, but, be interesting. It's important for us to really understand it, about the importance of being transparent in the way information generated.
Very well with the intellectual authenticity. Yeah.
It does. It absolutely does. And it makes, it's quite interesting. The exceptions are when there is the human element to leverage AI content. Yeah. Is that you don't necessarily need to then, cite publicly, this is, sort of AI generated. You can use the word AI assisted. Yeah. But the legal obligation becomes much less. But it can't be a cursory skim, according to the EU directive. You've got to have quality human assessment of the data. And I guess, organizations need to set up processes in case there's some sort of legal action taken as a consequence of any tool that you might have generated that has been generated by AI, that leads to a problem that could lead to litigation. So you need to make sure, organizations need to make sure that they have it's quite interesting. There are 2 words that are important. One is governance and the other is provenance. Yeah. So you need to know the provenance of where the information comes from. I think we do this at Consalia, by the way. Eddie's very careful about citing provenance. Yeah, even though it may be an AI assisted report that's been developed. And then governance. are two themes that I think companies are going to need to get their heads around if they haven't done it already. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it also connects with the IP, if you think about it, because you
Correct.
mentioned, or you,
100% Jesus. Yeah.
you
100%.
mentioned that,
It's
yeah,
so important. Yeah. It's really, you
sorry.
talk about enterprise, but, the SME market don't have the sophisticated systems in place to be able to manage it.
So when you spoke about the ChatGPT in enterprise, it's true that the companies tend to limit their access to web, etc. Is because of being concerned about how to use the data that is in the internet, and there is an IP thing, yeah. So I think to be honest with you, I see this, and maybe it's very visionary, but I see this as an interim moment, yeah, because
Yeah. I agree.
because when you think about the AI and you think about back in time, in a very simple example, the calculators, yeah. So you had a calculator, yeah. So you didn't have that, so we just made counts by, a piece of paper, or I don't know if you remember very very old school, which is kind of ruler that you
I do
did the
remember these days. I don't think Will would remember
Did you use an abacus?
because predated me slightly.
yeah.
But really the system didn't.
The engineers, when that now should be like 70, 80 years old, they used a ruler that had a special thing
Yeah.
that moved, and they
Yeah.
did very strong calculations, very difficult calculations. Then the calculator came in, and then
Yeah.
people may think, okay, it's like cheating, yeah, because you are not learning to do calculations. So AI is to another level, of course, because then you can produce video, you can produce avatars that look like the real person. So that's where I think authenticity and intellectual property is such important
Yeah,
for companies.
it
Yeah.
is.
But I think, in my view, now we are looking into, with the support of AI, kind of tag to emails or things like that.
Yeah.
I think this is like an interim thing. In the future, everyone will be using as normal. The only thing is that you have to get accountable for whatever you're producing to have the right IP, the right, intellectual authenticity after that, and it's your work, yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I think I don't want to talk too much about the legality of things, but what's going through my mind is how on earth are organizations meant to, or the legal practice meant to keep up with the pace of change that AI is implementing?
they don't.
And
I tell you, they
exactly
don't. They don't.
at the moment, it just seems like they're so far behind. And so
Because legal
how can
is like always like one of the most prudent, or cautious areas in the company, and
yeah
sometimes the adoption is not as fast as needed. I think it depends on the profile of the company. That company that have very low risk, appetite, and some others will be more keen to more risky environments. Yeah, and we've seen that with various cases. But at the end, it has to be a balance between the risk you want to take and how the market trends and the competition is doing. Yeah.
But Jesus, you can see, I guess, the concern of enterprises with the kind of the big Aviso project that we've just got the pilot for, with the large corporate, and it sat within the legal department for a long time, didn't it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I know that perhaps US clients wouldn't have gone through the same process as the EU client, or maybe it could be the culture of the company. I'm not sure, but certainly it seems that the EU and is much more cautious about trying to deal with some of these legal issues. Will that
Yeah,
you talk
I think the EU normally and historically has been much more powerful in terms of regulation, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because and you can see a sample with the AI. So we have an EU AI Act that works all around the European Union. You don't find the same thing in the US. Every state has a different regulation. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see that some states are much more advanced than others. Said this, once we say this, so I see that probably US is more used to innovate, so they are more keen to take risk, I would say, rather than the big organizations in Europe, because of these strong big regulators that we have across Europe. Yeah. So I think it's not just the company DNA, which if it's technology or it's an old manufacturing company that has been working for two centuries maybe, and their systems come from four decades ago. Yeah, things like that. We find that. So probably the adoption of AI it's not just the technology; it's also the people. It's not used to this kind of high tech environment. But then you see other companies that are more in the technology space, like laptop manufacturers or consumer electronics, that they are more into the technology, so the adoption will be much faster. Yeah, because it's more close to them, more natural. So I think it's a combination between the industry where you're in, the close you are to technology, and your regulatory framework, if it's in Europe or it's in the US, that will give the balance of and the pace of your adoption.
Yeah.
If it makes sense.
I mean, it's such a meaty subject, this one, because even the EU, by regulating or passing laws for AI regulation, if it's not aligned with China or if it's not aligned with America, well, America and China are just going to be developing tools and solutions at a much faster pace than EU.
Well, they
And then
run
going back to
sorry to interrupt, but they run the risk of legal fines in the
But
EU.
I sort of think that AI is here to stay, and it is, we're entering into this new era, and we need to be very competitive. And I think I feel I'm not sure if the States and China, would be too concerned about being fined by the EU.
They would if it was a $2 billion fine because of the way AI is being misused in a certain way, and we are seeing some very big fines coming out of the EU. I think Meta is a good example of that.
Beyond the fine, Phil, I think we are a market of 350 million users of Google, Android, etc. I think the fear they may have is that, but to be honest, I don't think this will happen, right? Because it's too many countries, too many different internal regulations. But the fear that they should have at some point, if they just stretch too much, is that the EU reorganizes itself and creates something for EU, like another US, right? If Germany, France, UK, Spain, Italy really join forces as a Europeans, and create a ChatGPT of Europe. But that's not happening. We have Mistral in France that has been powered by France, but we will never be able to compete with them unless we join forces. And the problem is that there is so many politics and so many history of so many countries in Europe that I don't see this happening in the short, medium term, or even long, to be honest. So the fines will come, and they change things to not disappoint users. I think the AI is a business, but there is a much bigger business, which is, the Google accounts, the Apple devices, etc. So we are talking about tera millions or whatever you're going to call it. It's not billions, it's much more than that. So, but definitely the fines help. But for instance, the fines are helping to some companies in Europe not to like to go with Llama in Meta, but go with Gemini. Not because Gemini and Claude, not because they are compliant, it's because they've said they will be compliant and they are working on it. Llama didn't say that. Yeah. So finally they will do it, because it's like the clouds and all the stuff. At the beginning, cloud was all in US, and companies started to say it has to be stored in Europe. So then they open Frankfurt, and they open Ireland, and they open other places in Europe. Yeah. So this is coming. But anyway, I think it's a globalized world, and Europe, unfortunately, is difficult. That plays like another giant itself, because we are quite fragmented.
Well, we've taken rather a lot of time on this, haven't we, Will? So just
it's been interesting. I mean, we've covered a lot about the AI topic and how we see this evolving landscape and how it's affected all of us, how business operate, how salespeople operate. I think we've covered what we think potentially might impact us for the second half of the year. I think AI is an evolving landscape, and it's only going to improve, I hope, the productivity and efficiency of how we operate. But yeah, to your point, I think we need to be and organizations need to be very cautious around how they leverage AI. In particular, Phil, you've raised that point around the developing account plans. I know that we were going to go through some reflections in terms of Consalia, but I'm just conscious that perhaps we need to save that conversation for the next episode, because there's been a lot that we've done in the last half of the year, and we've only got 10 minutes to cover it. What do you think?
I think it may be worth, another session rather than to cover it on this one. Yeah.
Because we've had various programs graduated. We've got a huge amount happening on the business school. We've not even spoken about that. Hezes, we've not really spoken about consulting. We've not spoken about a lot of the things that we've been delivering to new clients around the bespoke training. So I think there's an awful lot we can discuss for a next episode. But
what we could do is we could continue if you have time, and then George can cut this in half. Yeah. So rather than find another time in our diaries, but you may be busy at 11 minutes.
I'd rather save that for another episode, to be honest, Phil.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think perhaps we can. I mean, I don't really know how to wrap up this conversation.
I think.
I mean, we focused a lot about AI and the effects on organizations at a fairly holistic level.
But I think at a fairly holistic level. But I think the maybe it's just sort of my observations, and it's not a reflection of where other people might be at. But I feel as though we're entering, like Jesus mentioned earlier, I think in the conversation, is sort of we're in this sort of interim period. You use the example of the ruler and the calculator and so on. And I think that I feel as though I'm a bit in that process, as a business person, sort of. But I think beginning now to understand with much more clarity the pluses and minuses of AI, I suppose. That as a force for good, a force for productivity on the one hand, but can see some of the risk associated with misuse of AI, or particularly around transparency. And I think that sort of message, it may be just sitting in my head at the moment, but I think the EU directive has suddenly made it more clearer for me that it needs to be top of mind, I think, as we move forward into the next 6 months. And therefore, we need to make sure in the business school with our students that they're also aware of some of the risks associated, with using AI. They need to understand the ethical responsibility, perhaps, and the legal responsibility around it. It's content that could be formalized into our programs. I'm sure our academy team is going to be doing that if they haven't done it already.
Yeah, I think from my end, I think it's more critical now to understand what is the purpose of the use of AI. So many people start with the tool itself. Okay, before the tool, think about why you are thinking about to use AI. what are the use cases, what are the benefits, and there has to be benefits that you can measure from the very first week, from the very first month, because you cannot allow an investment of 6 months, 12 months, and then see if it happens or not, because you're going to be investing a lot, not just in the technology, but also in the people transformation. And I think also it's about how serious you want to be, because some people is like throwing tools and doing like a very small training. As we say in all our education, we have, certain interventions like the peer learning sets and coaching sessions that follow up after the main event, let's call it, and then it ensures that it's not just landed, but stays with them. All this education we've been given, we've been delivering, is the same thing on the AI. We need to get some, it's not just adoption, it's also the fact that they are using and growing themselves from the grounds where they've been given. So I think all these things start to be very important. Of course, I take the point on Phil on the privacy and IP and intellectual authenticity is extremely important. But that's the reason why I always say, we have to have the human in the loop always. Doesn't matter you have where you are in the pyramid, you're in the base, in the middle of up. You have to start at the beginning and think about the purpose, think about what you want to design, how you want to use for, what are the benefits you expect, measure these benefits. And then once you get the return from the AI, you have to apply critical thinking. So I believe that now in this AI super technology era, the sales mindsets and the mindsets we are working on are even much more important than before. That's my view.
Can't stop thinking about intellectual authenticity as being the counter to AI.
So if you have a budget, it's better to balance the budget in a way that maybe you don't invest so much in the technology, but invest much more in the humans, because the combination of both things will be better. Right? If you have a super software, but you don't invest on humans, so they will not adopt. So that's the reason why I think it has to encompass properly the two walls of the human and the machine. And I believe the human makes even much more relevant than before with AI, much more important. I don't know if all the organizations are realizing it, but we see it. We've realized very quickly, and we see in some of our clients already.
Okay.
Great. Well, I think that's a good note to wrap up. Phil, thank you very much. It's been really interesting, your point of view. And Jesus, thank you as well.
He's catching up fast, I should say. We need to be careful, Will. We need to just...
I know.
He's catching up fast on the AI, so...
Yeah. It's good.
Thank you for that.
The AI is not always true. They were predicting Argentina, and was not Argentina, was Spain.